My name is Ahmed Al Alawi. As some of you might already know, I'm an Egyptologist. I spent 22 years of my life studying not only the ancient periods of Egypt, but the modern periods as well. Egyptians were Nubians. In fact, Egypt was just an extension of Nubia, a claim often said by African Americans who claim to be Egyptians and who claim that Egypt was part of the Black history. Let us first address the fact that some African Americans have a nasty habit to present art from Nubia which depicted black people and claim that it represents the Egyptians. Nubians were indeed black people living in modern day Sudan. Despite them living under Egyptian rule and by Egyptian standards, Afrocentrists love to claim that Egyptians associated themselves with the Nubians to the south and that Egypt was just an extension of quote unquote the Nubian kingdom. In all of my 20 years in Egypt, did I ever read such a horrifying claim made by any ancient Egyptian source, made by any pharaoh, or made by any priest. Not only that this is a made up claim, it goes against the actual Egyptian views we have describing the Nubians. The first thing one must know is that the very word Nubia, coming from the Egyptian noun nuba, means in the literal sense slave. Any amateur in Egyptology would tell you that the Nubian region was a source for ebony, ivory, gold, and slaves for Egypt. And no, that goes for no other region to exclusively obtain slaves for Egypt except for Nubia, that the whole region was associated and named after slaves. In fact, calling any Egyptian at that time Nubian would be an insult. Not only did the Egyptians dissociated themselves from our Nubian friends to the south, we have poems, songs, and tons of depictions that show us how much the Egyptians hated the black race. The racism demonstrated by Egyptians toward Nubians, which is noticeable from the way Egyptians exaggerated the Nubian features, was no different from the hatred Europeans had for African Americans, who also exaggerated their features. West Africans live today by European standards and speak their language. In fact, all of West Africa was under European rule. Claiming the Egyptians associated themselves with the Nubians would be exactly like saying the British associated themselves with West Africans and that the British came from West Africa. As outrageous this claim is to you, the claim that the Egyptians came from Nuba or Nubia, which meant land of the slaves, would be outrageous to an ancient Egyptian. The Egyptians' racist views of the black race was no different from the colonial Europeans' racist views. Any African American worshipping Egypt this way is as naive as any African American worshipping the colonial Europeans who enslaved him in the first place.
I start each day by thanking a white man for the sunrise, for the land I walk on, for the air I breathe. I also apologize for but Lord knows they ain't gonna apologize for themselves. I am not black, nor do I consider myself to be black. Many people mistake me for being Negro because they don't know that I am currently living with the heartbreak of revitiligo. That's a skin condition that's the opposite of what Michael Jackson's got. Every morning I apply this topical ointment made of bleach and sulfur. I like to think it works. Luckily, I hadn't gotten much darker in the last few years.